After composing songs about girls, cars, and surfing, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys makes a pivotal change in his songwriting style with God Only Knows. Devastatingly beautiful, controversial, and a milestone in American rock and roll. A song so good, it even has Sir Paul McCartney claiming it to be the greatest song ever written. This is the story of God Only Knows. In the mid-60s, a friendly rivalry is brewing between the Beach Boys and the lads from Liverpool, where the Beatles' Rubber Soul has just been released, confirming that the Beatles are more than just some pop boy band. With songs like Norwegian Wood, Michelle, and Girl, the Beatles deliberately challenged what a rock and roll song could be. And after a long reclusive time spent shut in writing surfer songs, Brian Wilson was ready to do the same, if not more. After the Beach Boys toured Japan in 1965, Brian chose to stay indoors and get cracking on some new songs. These were precursor compositions that would end up making one of the most celebrated rock albums ever, Pet Sounds. Musically, this song plays like a dance and a study in chord progression, meandering from chord to chord gently, yet wildly, and finally relieving the listener as we settle on God Only Knows What I'd Be Without You. However, Brian didn't write those lyrics. He wanted help, so after holding on to that song and a few others, Brian meets a friend of a friend at a party back in California, Tony Asher, an executive advertiser who also wrote jingles for Mattel Toys and Gallo Wines. When Brian Wilson asked him for help on the lyrics, Tony leapt at the opportunity. So Tony Asher joins Brian Wilson at Brian's house, and they began to discuss many things. Brian is a genius, and he's also rather eclectic. He would discuss with Tony Asher his love of music, spirituality, the nature of love, and would sometimes decide that he would also like to show Tony his mechanical parrots and maybe squeeze in a viewing of the TV show Flipper. But when they got round to Brian's music, that is where magic began to happen. Brian began to play a few songs he had in mind for the Pet Sounds album, and Tony would furiously scribble notes and ideas for lyrics. They would do this ritual for a few weeks, until Brian plays the music to God Only Knows. Tony busts out the lyrics, "I may not always love you," and Brian immediately says that is absolutely one of the worst ways to start a love song. He said it was too negative, but Tony explained, "Consider the next line, but long as there are stars above you, you'll never need to doubt it." Tony says, "This is the one song that I thought would be a hit record because it was so incredibly beautiful. I was concerned that maybe the lyrics weren't up to the same level as the music. How many love songs start off with the line, 'I may not always love you'? I liked that twist, and I fought to start the song that way. Working with Brian, I didn't have a lot of fighting to do, but I was certainly willing to fight to the end for that. God Only Knows is, to me, one of the great songs of our time. I mean, the great songs. Not because I wrote the lyrics, but because it's an amazing piece of music that we were able to write a very compelling lyric to. It's the simplicity, the inference that I am who I am because of you, that makes it very personal and tender." At the time, saying the word God in a song that wasn't a hymnal or God Bless America was a pretty rare event, and Brian and Tony were genuinely worried that the song wouldn't even get airtime on the radio because of that word. Also, they implored that it wasn't about any specific God, but it was more the concept of something bigger. Brian says, "That was a vision Tony and I had. It's like being blind, but in being blind, you can see more. You close your eyes, and you're able to see a place or something that's happening." When it came time to record this masterpiece of a song, Brian didn't believe even his own voice was right for it, and instead decided his little brother Carl, who rarely sang lead, was perfect for it. Brian says, "I was looking for a tenderness and a sweetness, which I knew Carl had in himself, as well as in his voice, which was perfect because Carl is claimed to be the most spiritual member of the Beach Boys, stating, 'We believe in God as a kind of universal consciousness. God is love. God is you. God is me. God is everything right here in this room. It's a spiritual concept which inspires a great deal of our music.'" Just before recording the song with an eclectic group of instruments and intricate vocal harmonies, Carl says they prayed together. They prayed for light and guidance through the album, guidance to make the most healing sounds, and they did. And the song goes down in history as a triumph for music and the Beach Boys. And finally, Remember how Brian was shocked, inspired, and maybe even a little jealous when he heard what the Beatles were doing with Rubber Soul? Well, when the Beatles were at a party all the way in England and put on Pet Sounds, when God Only Knows began to play, John and Paul rushed off to compose the great song Here, There, and Everywhere. And Paul claims God Only Knows is one of the best songs ever. And I'll leave you with this quote from Paul McCartney that sums up how powerful this song really is. Paul says, "God Only Knows is one of the few songs that reduces me to tears every time I hear it. It's really just a love song, but it's brilliantly done. It shows the genius of Brian. I've actually performed it with him, and I'm afraid to say that during the sound check, I broke down. It was just too much to stand there, singing this song that does my head in, and to stand there singing it with Brian." If you enjoy these videos and want to support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. My videos will always be free, and this is a great way to help me make them better for you. Check out my debut album, The HollyHobs, on Spotify and Apple Music, and click the like button, subscribe, and notification bell because that is the best way to get notified when a new video is released. See you next time.